When the chill season trailer dropped, there was one thing and one thing only that I was excited about, and it wasn't the Paintbrush Nouveau. I stopped being excited the moment I saw its kit. No, it was the return of my beloved Bluefin Depot. And I was not alone in my excitement. So many people have been asking for Bluefin's return ever since we had to move to Splatoon 2. But with this excitement came fear, since yeah, we don't have the best track record when it comes to port to Splatoon 1 maps. So now that Chill Season's been out for a bit, does Bluefin live up to its older version? Well, let's take a quick look at its older version, shall we? So, Splatoon maps, especially Splatoon 3 maps, have kind of become infamous for being Tetris pieces, and the OG Bluefin is no exception. In fact, it's the eye block. So why is it that we love Bluefin but not the Splatoon 3 maps? Because Bluefin managed to execute well on a unique gimmick and nostalgia. Bluefin is unique in that it is the only map in the series, that I can remember, that doesn't have one mid, but has two. Undertow kind of attempted this, with its mid being split in two by a random wall, but Undertow is a failure of a map anyway, so who cares? Bluefin managed to create some really interesting situations where teams had to decide how they wanted to split their resources. The devs tried to make it so that no mid was favoured over the other, and this is best seen in splat zones. The zone was always on one side of the map, but not the other. You might initially think that the side without the zone was useless. However, the unzoned side had ramps leading onto the zone that would give the team that controlled them a positional advantage, and failing that, you could straight up just get onto the enemy platform there if left unchecked. You could have gone around mid to flank their backline. A revolutionary idea, I know. Teams would have to decide how many people they wanted to send at the zone and how many people they wanted to send to the side, and again, these sides were weighted evenly. Most teams would usually just send 2 people to the zone and 2 people to split push, but they could also send more or less depending on how they wanted to approach fights. But it wasn't just how many people you sent that mattered. It was also who you sent that mattered. You could have your backline on plat looking over the zone, sure, but you could also send a charger or jet squelcher to the unzoned side of mid to get some surprise angles on the enemy team. But Bluefin's good design doesn't end with mid. The main downfall of Tetris piece maps is that they tend to force players down one main route with very little room for alternate routes or side angles. But Bluefin, despite being a Tetris piece, manages to avoid this problem. In Rainmaker, for example, if you want to move the Rainmaker to the enemy plat, you have 4 routes, 4 paintable walls you can climb, and should you get to the plat and want the Rainmaker to go into the enemy spawn, where the goal is, you have 3 more options. On the far right side of plat, you have a graded bridge, which, while slow, is pretty reliable at gaining points and is probably your safest option. Should you want to skip bridge entirely, you have a block you can climb, and you can make a jump from there into the enemy spawn. The Rainmaker carrier is pretty exposed and pretty easy to kill, so it's not that easy of an option, but it's great if your team gets a tabula rasa. To the left of plat, there's also a paintable wall you can climb. It takes you to a different graded bridge and isn't easy to pull off, but it's a great mix-up and can easily grab you a bunch of points should you be able to pull it off. So despite being a hallway, your team isn't necessarily funneled into any specific route, and you can play this map in a multitude of different ways. So how did this change in Splatoon 3? Well, they added a wall. This wall represents everything that I dislike about the Bluefin rework, because this wall has some unique features. First off, it's unpaintable. And okay, that's not unique. Many walls suffer with this affliction in Splatoon 3. But this wall, despite being unpaintable, is designed to be crossed. It has a ramp to its right that lets players easily get up, but to its left, there's only a paintable block that you have to jump off of to get up. This alone makes it so that it's more difficult to cross a wall from left than from the right. This means if a player wants to drop left from their spawn, they can, but it's going to be harder to retreat should things get too spicy. But it also makes it harder for the enemy team to flank you from that side, almost as if the devs don't want you dropping that way on rollout, almost as if the devs want you to stick to the right side of the map. But the devs favouring right side rollout doesn't end there, because the spawns have also moved. Well, they moved your spawn to the far right, making you closer to the right side of mid. Again, you still have the option of rolling out left, but now you have to contend with the fact that the enemy team is going to be there before you will, and they will have already set up. These 2 mids aren't rated equally anymore. The right side, the one that's easier to get to and closer to your spawn, is now your side, and the left side is now the enemy side. It used to be that there were 2 separate mids and 2 separate fights that would be happening in each, but now though, in the reworked version, each team gets a mid and fights happen across them. It's also why this godforsaken wall is harder to cross from the left. The enemy team has easier access to your left plat than your right, and they don't want you to avoid mid fights entirely by flanking their plat. But this effectively removes Bluefin's gimmick, doesn't it? The 2 mids function completely differently now. Instead of Bluefin being an eye block with some weird split in the middle, The new Bluefin effectively just has yet another S block, something we have enough of in Splatoon 3. But this removal of a gimmick kind of explains something about the new map design that had initially baffled me when I saw it in the trailers. Why are there lifts? Well, the map needed something to make it unique, and lifts are that something. So, I've complained a lot about the rework and how it's affected Bluefin's identity, but I haven't answered perhaps the most important question. Is it any good? Tower Controller Rainmaker I think are pretty iffy, and Clan Blitz is basically unplayable, but Splat Zones? That one's interesting. Remember how I said that in old Bluefin the zone always stuck to one side of the map? It worked back then, but in the new version it would be incredibly imbalanced. One team would always be closer to the zone and would always have an advantage over the other in terms of objective control. So to counteract this, the devs introduced the first ever moving zone. One that starts in the centre, but when you cap it, it moves away from you, towards the enemy side of mid. And of course, when the enemy caps it, it moves towards you. And this is quite interesting, since they avoid doing the easy but boring option of just creating an immovable zone in the middle that connected the two mids. There was an attempt to preserve what made Splat Zones unique on the old Bluefin and try to make it fit with the current Bluefin design. It doesn't do this perfectly. The orientation of the ramps between mids and that godforsaken wall kinda disincentivise staying on the unzoned mid for too long, since there's not really much of an advantage to be gained there anymore. But this map manages to make itself interesting by making the zone position shift to always favour the defending team. The zone always moves to their side, giving them quicker access and easier access to it from spawn, and they get to fight on the right side of plat, which is just objectively better and easier to fight on. This will probably give games played on Bluefin an interesting back and forth unique to this map mode. So is Bluefin good? Yes, but only on Splat Zones. I genuinely think that Bluefin Splat Zones is up there with some of the best map modes in Splatoon 3, if only for this reason, but I'm happy with that, since that already makes it better than some of the other Splatoon 1 reworks, like Hammerhead Bridge. But with that said, thank you for getting this far, and pass to La Vista.